All right. So today we read these two articles. I have, if you've posted your pressies, I haven't seen them yet. So I'll be interested to hear what you two have to say. But Nancy Baker's The Effect of Portfolio Based Instruction on Composition Students' Final Examination Scores, Course Grades, and Attitudes Towards Writing. And also Nancy Summers's, she actually wrote this article before she wrote the other one.
I saw that.
Revision strategies of student writers and experienced adult writers. So today there's a common theme, right? Revision.
Yeah.
How do you teach students revision? And says my internet connection's unstable. Hopefully you guys can hear me. I'm at the school, so
Yeah, I can hear you. I haven't had any issues so far.
the common thread today is revision and how we go about teaching it, and that's an important thing to talk about in a class on grammar because, as we discussed last time, lots of times your students will struggle with grammar mightily, and then of course there's also the composition of their ideas and how do you kind of balance those two things in order for the student to learn. So, so which art? So let me see what you guys have to say. Which articles did you guys pick? Did you
I
do
picked Summers.
what you?
I also picked Summers.
Did you? Well, I really like Summers' first article. And I honestly, this one I didn't think was as good, but it still was. It was good. It just wasn't as good as the last article she wrote. But like you said, it was written before the other one.
I would
Um,
agree
do you?
100%.
Yeah, it's not as well written, but it's still decent. It's not bad. Just it's a shame that we both did the same one though, but that's okay. Um, do you want to go first, Joanna, or you want me to?
Go ahead. It's okay. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just got out of practice, so I'm snacking on a bag of Cheez-Its right now.
Hey,
So
yeah, you take your time. I
give me time
understand.
to finish my bag of Cheez-Its.
Refuel. But so my perspective of her article was, she was definitely talking about doing a case study more or less on um, adult writers that were experienced, like, journalists and just
Mm,
writers in general, and then students, college students. And she basically wanted to see how they revised things. So um, she noticed that with the college students that they were more focused on their wording, and they didn't care so much about if their idea was conveyed, like, how well they conveyed their idea. They were more worried about revising, um, using strong words, basically with the thesaurus and things like that. And she also mentioned that they seemed to feel like they didn't need to revise if that they were inspired by, they were inspired by whatever they were writing about. So they didn't feel like, they needed to go back and go through because they were certain of the things they were saying. They were very sure of it. And then experienced adult writers, alternatively, they have a tendency to focus on whether or not their idea is good, is sound. And they also consider the viewpoint of the reader, the perspective of the reader who's reading what they've written. And the college students did not do that. They didn't care about that. So those were the two differences she made between the college students and the experienced adult writer. And from what I took from it was basically um, that the revision strategies used by the experienced writers were like, they learned it as a result of their experience. And that it's something that happens maybe over time. And maybe if someone were to point out to the college students, hey, you should focus more on, whether your idea is good and that you're getting it across to whoever's reading it, or before you concern yourself with the way that it's written, like the words that you use, because that's really not that big of a deal. You're basically going to be, and the students were also really concerned with repeating themselves. That was their biggest issue. So and she said, there was a really strong quote. She said that um, students understand the revision process as a rewarding activity. That's that first quote. But the second one is they do rewording sentences to avoid lexical repetition, but they blind themselves to problems on the textual level. Although they're using different words, they're restating the same idea, and they're not realizing that they're doing this. So because they're focused on strong words, and they're not concerned with the fact that they're saying the same thing several times in different ways, basically.
Do you pretty much agree with? You did a nice job summarizing her there. What,
Yeah, what my post is good, but
what's your application? Have you found yourself doing things that she's talked about here before, like looking at your wording too much rather than your?
sometimes that is something maybe in high school and maybe in the beginning of my college career I did notice that I was doing, maybe at times, but I also have had this innate ability to realize at times, wait, I am saying the same thing over and over again in different ways. Like she had said, that doesn't mean I'm an experienced writer by any means, or that I know what I'm doing. Please don't take me wrong. But like, I have always been able to, for the most part, have a good idea that I was doing something like that. Like, and she is right though about the inspiration. I think for anyone who's inspired when they're writing about something, that, it is easier for them to write. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't be revised. That doesn't mean you're not making mistakes. So
What about you, Joanna? What's your thoughts?
I had very like I got a lot of the obviously we read the same article, so I got the similar things from it. Basically, like she said, it's more of she says, I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up my Pressy right now. She kind of discusses the insights on the differing revision strategies that students and adult writers have. She says, like, kind of like the students often focus on surface level edits, and the experienced writers are more about to help their ideas be better. And then basically for me, for my application, I did it more of not me as a student, but me as a future teacher. And so I said that it's gonna improve my teaching style, based just recognizing because I can recognize these variations and like help my students understand that they need to work more ideas rather than surface level editing, and just kind of make it a big thing that I could do is like peer criticism. I know I took AP literature in high school, and we did peer criticism a lot where somebody else would read it and then like you'd get feedback on what it sounds like and stuff, and it's not just surface level. It was more of like a expand more on this specific idea that you have rather than other stuff. So just making it more like fun for my students and make it more creative rather than just all right, you fixed the grammar, it's perfect now, because it doesn't work like that. You need to make sure your ideas are engaging and hitting the right target area.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up peer review, um, because I think in my experience as a teacher, that's where I see this type of thing happening the most. Like, let me see if I can pull peer review one of my peer review sheets up. Yeah, here's one. So this is your comment made me think of this, Jonah. This is one of my peer review sheets. Is it sharing it? Can you guys see it?
Yeah, it just came up.
Yeah, like usually the way that I try to word these sheets is I'll start with like the big ideas level questions first, and then notice the eighth question is list any grammatical concerns you may have through the piece, like commas, places, run-ons, point of view. So I always try to emphasize on the sheet that the ideas level is what goes first. However, most of the time my students just kind of blow off the sheet, and they'll go in and they'll circle each other's commas and stuff like that. But to keep in mind, this is usually in like a 101 or 102 class. If I did this in this class where everybody's a serious student, maybe it would be different. But yeah, typically students will try to tend to blow off giving the big ideas level critiques, and instead they'll just do the grammar level critiques. I do think
like sauna, you obviously you need some kind of like water or something. And toasters and water.
Did you want to say something, Amelia?
I was waiting until you were done.
This is great. Great.
Do you want me to go ahead and say it? Okay. My thing is, I think maybe people are concerned about offending someone as far as the ideas are concerned. Like, oh, because me personally, I can be at times, I overthink about my writing a lot. I don't know why, but I find it very important that people understand what I'm trying to convey. But, so it also makes me, what's the word I'm looking for? Me personally, it makes me think about myself and my writing. And if someone were to tell me, oh, you didn't express your idea in a way that I understood, I wouldn't be offended, but I would be like upset at myself. Do you get what I'm saying? So maybe they're worried about making somebody, it's such an easy word, but I'm at a loss for what it is. It messes with your confidence. There we go.
We'll just say
and people are so not confident.
They'll just say you triggered them. We'll just say that.
Yeah. It's a triggering thing, I guess. But yeah, being concerned that you're going to offend someone, like, oh, they think they're doing a great job, but they suck in reality. And you got to tell them, So
I feel like going off what both of you were saying as well is like with the people, yes, because I get scared when I peer review because I'm like, I don't want to be too mean, but I want to be honest about what I'm like reading. So like, I feel like you could have really good peer reviews if you teach how to peer review. Not saying like, obviously you're a professor, like this is something that we should have learned in a lot of people should have learned in high school how to do, or even middle school. So I feel like because everybody was just taught grammar and it wasn't really taught to expand ideas as much, that's why on peer reviews people go for grammar so much instead of going for the ideas. But once you're actually taught the correct way to peer review, like you were trying to do with these questions or your paper that you have right here, it's just more of like, I guess people
they're not comfortable, right?
Yeah, not
because they don't know how to.
I feel like nobody's really taught. I got taught in junior year of high school how to actually peer review with that AP literature class. And if I would have learned before then, it would have been so much easier to peer review students' things, because once you learn the correct way, like we learned compliment sandwiches, tell them something that they did really good, then put in your criticism, and then end it with something really good. So that way,
that's great.
Because then you're not really hurting anybody's feelings, but you're conveying your message, but you're also telling them, hey, this is a really good idea. You kind of lost me in this part right here. But I like the word choices you use to convey it. Maybe expand more on that. Then you're like, okay, I need to expand more on this idea, but I have the basis of it down, instead of feeling like I'm hurt because I did it wrong.
I think you're going to be a great teacher, Jonah. I really do. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, if you, I think you're right. Just a lot of students just haven't been taught the proper way. It's like with this. I know before I do a peer review, I don't think any of you guys have ever done peer reviews in my classes. No, I know you didn't in my last class, Amelia, because you were the only one in there.
Right. Yeah. No, I didn't. It was just me on display all the time.
But yeah, I typically try to explain like when I go over the sheet, I'm always like, look, the thesis is important. The what's the purpose of the paper, like you see with question 3. Are all the parts of the paper here? I always try to tell them like these are the important things, and the grammar is the smaller things. But typically, for me, this is one of the most frustrating things for me as a teacher. It typically just goes in one ear and out the other. I suspect, actually have a hypothesis about this. I suspect that it's because a lot of people don't print their papers out anymore. They just put it on the computer. And it's such a pain in the butt to mark stuff on somebody's paper on a computer. Usually today, students will trade computers. I have a hypothesis that if I told them print it out, maybe they would be more willing to write. I don't know. Maybe not.
I think you're right with that too, because it is harder. Because you can't unless you have a stylus of some sort and a touchscreen computer that makes it simpler for you to write things on someone else's written paper. Then otherwise, yeah, printing it probably would be better, more effective.
Yeah, so many students don't have printers and stuff. It's sometimes I teach in a lab where they do have printers. So yeah, maybe next time I do this, I'll try that. But oftentimes too, the struggle you get with peer review is maybe you got one student who's up here, you got one student who's down here.
Yeah, yeah.
How's the student down here going to help the student up here? Typically, it's the student up here helping the one down here, but the one up here doesn't really get any good feedback. Yeah, I mean, even like you guys being in K-12 classrooms, right? This is something to think about. I think even for the little itty bitties, right? If you can get them to kind of collaborate and start working with each other, even at a young age, I think that would.
It enhances critical thinking skills for sure as well. So makes them better at doing these types of tasks later on in life. So you're right. It's better that they start young.
Yeah, maybe in the early grades, I would say maybe just focus on like grammar and stuff. But as you get up through middle school, I think that's when you can really start thinking about ideas. Of course, typically in middle school, they teach like 5-paragraph essays and stuff. But you can still, I think even at that age, you can get across as your thesis clear. Are you giving good evidence? Are your transitions clear? Like I think even at that age, you can start peer reviewing that kind of stuff. We're kind of going on a tangent talking about peer review, but I'm glad you brought that up, Juliana, just because it is an important thing in a writing classroom to master. Frankly, I don't think I've mastered it yet. I haven't found that balance. Sometimes in online classes, I just don't even do it at all. Because especially in online classes, you know how the discussion boards look. Everybody blows smoke up each other's butt.
Yes. It makes it so hard too, though, because sometimes, because they want you to respond to your classmates, and either you're saying the same things and you just don't know how to sometimes in a different way because of the content that's there. I mean, there's so many different things that I have against the response. Like, it's good to have, like, you get other people's perspectives and such, but there's also times where it's just like, oh my gosh, this is just too much. You have us do this every week, and
Yeah.
it's always the same stuff, and everybody's always saying the same things, and so it is a little bit frustrating. I agree with that, the discussion stuff. uh
Yeah, maybe maybe when we do our final papers in here, maybe I'll try to conduct a peer review just to see what it looks like. Um,
I think you'll be better with education students, the peer review thing,
Probably.
um, just because of what we're going into and how important it is, for us to know how to do this the appropriate way. So
Yeah, I've actually been very pleased with the discussion post responses on the discussion forums and stuff. I'm still seeing a lot of agreeing, but usually they add something about why they agree at least. So,
yeah,
I
I've gotten a lot of good points. I'm sorry, Joanna, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just gonna say I feel like I agree with a lot of them, but it's also just because I feel like because I don't see anybody in this class in person except for Maggie because she's on my softball team, that it's hard for me to like. I don't know. I know you shouldn't take things personally, but like I feel like with somebody that I actually know or am at least around in class, that they know how I like talk and stuff. So especially on a discussion post, like responding, I'm talking like how I'm thinking in my head is exactly what I'm typing out. So I feel like I just try to find something to agree with and then expand on that and how it related to me and my prezi, because it feels like if I disagree, they're gonna think I'm just trying to be
A butthole. Yeah.
a butthole. Sorry, I
Yeah.
forgot not the bad word. I was like, I can't remember what the non-bad word one is. But I'm just like, I just feel like it's a little more difficult in a virtual class because, especially because the last two classes, me and Amelia are the only two that have shown up.
mm,
Like, I feel like I could disagree on Amelia's, um,
Yeah, I wouldn't.
because she's heard me speak in class and she's heard me like give input and like just knows that this is how I talk. Like my thoughts just come out like I just say what I'm thinking and don't really like try to make it sound refined.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you there. It's a lot about not knowing the person on the other side, how they're going to respond, all that. So, or even sometimes, I hate to say it, I'm not saying in this class, but like in other classes, their content, they don't have a lot to say sometimes. It's not like,
mm.
anything you haven't heard, and you don't know you don't want to be like, oh, well, I've heard this before. You really do sound like a jerk then.
Way to be generic, right?
Yeah, I guess. But I'm not saying I've never been generic either. So,
Yeah, I think people in this class are doing a pretty good job with that. I've been reading them. I noticed a lot of people were praising you the other day, Amelia, for your Nancy Summers response. I saw that on there.
yeah, I mean, it's really nice. Some of the stuff that I get, I feel like where we don't have to respond, there's times I've even responded in a private email and I'm like, they think I'm just like one of these people that I go like, yeah, I like to go above and beyond, but just, thoughtful responses. I like to let them know that I appreciated it. Or I think that someone asked me a question once and I never responded to it. And I think it was in this class because we didn't have to respond. And I didn't see it until much later. So I sent them a private email answering their question.
That was
Like,
nice
oh,
of you.
well, I'm thinking they think that I'm full of myself or something too when I do stuff like that. But that's not the case at all. I tried to convey that through the email. Like, I realized that I never responded to this, but this is why. And this is the answer to that question. So, but I don't want people to think, because I'm not full of myself by any means, but I can see how someone might think that. I don't know. Sometimes I think people get the wrong idea.
Sometimes confidence is misinterpreted.
Yeah. Yeah. Confidence can be a good thing and it can be taken the wrong way.
Yeah, there's
I
going back to the article. There are some interesting points she talks about in here. Um, I think, from my experience, again, I've been teaching first year writing since 2010, so I've been doing it for a while. Um, for the most for the most part, this is a good sign as a way to segue into talking about the next article too, because a lot of teaching writing depends on how you go about it. Okay, so you have different classes where you turn in your paper the first time, you get a grade on it, and then that's it, right? That's how I typically approach it in upper level classes. Even the world lit, that's how I did it, right? I'll give, I might give you a revision chance, but typically I'll give you the grade, and then that's it. 99% of the time, people don't take me up on doing a revision in that type of
Well,
class.
now I made. Let me. This is kind of funny. I had a paper I turned in, and I got a 91, and I asked him if I could do a revision on it. He said, "You do not need to do a revision."
Who,
And
me?
yes, I tried to take you up on it, and you were like, "No need. It's okay. You got an A." And I was like, "Yeah, but I want a higher A."
Always the perfectionist, Joanna. But typically, when somebody gets B or C or something like that, that's usually when um, or even worse, right? That's typically when I want to um, urge it on. Um, but So that's one type of classroom, right? The other type is the portfolio based classroom. And this is something that I've had debates about with my fellow English teachers here at Bluefield. I'm the only one who likes portfolios, but none of them want it. Um, I know, Joanna, did you take 101, 102 here?
I took 101 in high school.
High school?
And then I took 102 with, oh my gosh, what's his name? He has a bunch of kids. They play soccer.
Mark Botts.
Yes, I took it with bots.
He's good. Um,
I really enjoyed him as a professor.
yeah, but the way that our program is set up right now is um, there's lots of reasons for why it's set up this. I'm not going to get into all the politics of the department, but the way our class is set up now, it's kind of like a portfolio. You submit a rough draft first, and then you grade it, and immediately after that, they submit a final draft, and then you grade it. Um, the way that I like to do it is it's the same thing almost, but it's more spaced out. So they'll do their final for now copy first. And this is one of the main differences. I actually don't like to give a grade the first time in a portfolio. Nancy Baker talks about that. Um, if you don't give a grade the first time, that kind of and we have to give a grade the first time with the way the department here wants to do it. But if you don't give a grade the first time, the students tend to take more risks, right? Um, Even in a case like what you were just talking about, Joanna, you got feedback. I gave you the A, then I told you didn't have to. Well, if it was in a portfolio class, there's actually more of a higher standard in a way, right? Because I can be like, okay, like as I always wrote with you, right? Your logic and all that's good. Need to polish some more. Yeah, but I wouldn't give you a grade, and that would encourage you to actually go in and do the polishing stuff because you're still kind of seeking that good grade. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, 100%. I feel like it would be so helpful if like we could turn in a rough draft and like not get a grade like you said, don't get a grade on it, but be like, this is probably a B plus essay. You know what I mean? Like kind of get a grade, but not like an actual grade. And so that way, like we were like, okay, so if it's a B plus, then that means I'm not hitting this part and this part right. I need to work on that better instead of just one and doneing it.
yeah, that's how we do it right now at Bluefield. Like we'll give that grade like B plus. Here's what to work on. In a traditional portfolio, you don't give grades at all until there's 2 points in the semester that you give a grade. You give a grade at midterm. So depending on how many papers they've done up to that point, usually one or two, and you'll, of course, the first time you write them feedback, you'll write it like, okay, here's things your paper's doing good. Here's things your paper needs to work on. Work on it again for the next draft for the portfolio. And typically, for those big picture revisions, more people are willing to do them in that system. It kind of because the grade's removed, the grade's still a mystery. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm just going to go from a B plus to an A minus or something, probably won't do that much. But if the grade's still kind of a mystery, then I think there's more of an incentive there to do some bigger revisions. And it also helps each student. So maybe Harry is struggling to even write a sentence, right? But maybe Tim is up here on another level. Well, that the portfolio system kind of allows you to challenge Tim just as much as Harry, right? So even Tim is getting. It's not just an easy class for Tim at that point. Tim's getting instruction to make him even better, even though he's already good. And again, you're not giving him the A the first time, saying "Good job, Tim, A." Instead, even then, just saying, "Here's things you're doing good. Here's things you can do better." So everybody learns and grows under this portfolio system. The downside of it is that it does create some. There's lots of people. I don't know if you two are like this, but there's lots of people that really stress over grades. Like if you get a B plus on something, right? You're over there about ready to blow a fuse.
I can't wait to get out. Yeah, I think Jonah and I stress about grades.
Well, I stress really bad about. I didn't in high school, but I do now because I'm on an athletic and an academic scholarship, and both of those rely me to keep my grades high to keep those. So that's how I pay for my school. Like in high school,
Right.
High school was free. I didn't have to. I mean, I obviously I was a good student. Like I kept good grades, but it wasn't as much pressure. And now it is, and I'm like thinking, I'm like, okay, I got to be on this assignment, but if I get A's on everything else, I still end with the A. I'm still on president's list. Da da da. You know what I mean?
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like there are lots of these pressures. Usually the grade average isn't too extremely high to keep these types of things. Usually it's like a 3.0 or something. Maybe not with yours. Maybe yours is like a 3.5 or something.
Well, my academic scholarships, I get extra money if I stay on like president's list and dean's list. Like it's more than I started out with because I keep my grades so high. So it's more like I want to keep that extra money they keep on giving me.
Okay, so that's definitely an incentive. Money is always an incentive. Um, yeah, this system, I think there's much greater potential for learning in them, but people get so stressed out over grades that you only get one grade at midterm and then one grade at the final. And it also gives, I admit, it does give a lot of power to the teacher. Like at WVU and English 101, when I taught it up there, everybody had a grade on a portfolio. But all the writings added up together were worth 70% of the overall total. And all of the like busy work and stuff like that was worth like the other 30. So if you do the math that way, that whatever you get on that 70% is probably going to be what you get in the class. Well, so that kind of causes the anxiety levels a little bit to shoot through the roof close to the end. And it also gives a disproportionate amount of power to the teacher. Like maybe you did great on all your papers, but maybe your teacher's a nitpicker, right? Well, that might cause your teacher to give you a B when you really deserved an A. It causes lots of those types of problems because there's not clear communication on where you stand at any given moment.
If anybody could do it effectively, or someone have a student be confident or feel confident in it, you could do it because you're fair. So you have a lot of integrity, and you're really, you don't seem to show like any type of bias or whatever. You try to be fair with everything. So that I've seen so far. So, I mean, you could make it happen. But I'm saying, yeah, I see where you're coming from. How others might be concerned with the portfolio because of the power the teacher might have. I've had a couple instructors, not too many. Most instructors like me, but I've had a couple that I felt like did not care for me. So I can be an acquired taste.
Let me see if I can show you guys my rubric for the portfolios. I haven't done portfolios in a couple of years since I've been here. Let me see if I can find the rubric. Yep. So usually with portfolios, like you'll have like your 4 assignments or whatever the case is, and at that point, all of the assignments have been. Let's see. Stop presenting this. At that point, all of the assignments have been revised. So whenever you get a portfolio, like at the end of the semester, you have 4 whole papers here, and you're trying to kind of holistically measure all 4 of them. So this was my rubric. Superior portfolios an A. It demonstrates originality, initiative, and sophistication that go beyond the requirements. Portfolio at this level is composed of well-edited texts of different genres that show a clear, connected sense of audience, purpose, and development. The writer is able to analyze his or her own writing, reflect on it, and revise and rewrite accordingly. The portfolio takes risks that work. And then compare it to a B. A B is strong versus superior. So a B succeeds in meeting its goals in terms of audience purpose and genre without need for further major revisions. The writer is able to reflect on their writing and make some choices about revision. The writer takes risks, although they may not all be successful. The writing could use further fine-tuning. So one of you guys tell me with the way that I wrote that, what's the difference between an A and a B?
Just I guess the ability level is part of it. Like, they're just on a higher level in general. Doesn't mean that they don't have mistakes, but they're really good at fixing what needs fixed. Like they're really good about taking into account where those mistakes are and, fine tuning it. The B, I mean, the A and the B are kind of close, to be honest with you. I'd be a little worried myself, but otherwise, but yeah, I can see the difference in the two. The risk taker, usually, if they do a good job at those risks, if they made good choices about the risks,
Right.
then those are
I
the
was,
ones that get the
I was gonna say the same thing, Amelia, about the risk taking. I feel like the A is like somebody that's willing to push their limits, and B is somebody that's just willing to like do the work correctly, but to be superior, they're wanting to push the limits to see how far they can succeed, if that makes sense.
A. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, typically, if the writing was pretty good, but people really showed that extra effort. Like maybe they reorganized their paragraphs, or maybe they added something brand new to the paper that made it better. Usually, that's who I gave A's to, versus B's was usually people who did a pretty good job the first time, but usually their revisions were little super.
Well, you remember World Lit, how you gave examples of things that you could use to do your paper on, your research paper or whatever, and I chose something similar, but was totally different. It wasn't one of the listed things. Do you remember that? Like, I guess that was me taking a risk, right?
Yeah.
So, because I didn't do I don't know if anyone's ever done that before in any of your classes, but I didn't choose to go by one of those questions. I made up one of my own, but had to do with it was similar to one of the questions, basically.
Yeah, that's when you wrote about Antigone, if I remember.
Yeah. Misogyny. That was that paper. It was on misogyny. So, in world literature.
Yeah, like I think you summed it up. Like usually the risk takers are who get the A in this, versus the B is maybe the people who just focus on improving their grammar and their wording, right? More so than taking really big risks as far as revising. But you can see, you can see here how this is hard. There's not a very big line here, and I always found it extremely difficult to decide at some points, like whether the person fits in the A or the B, just because a lot of it's just my personal opinion, and there's no truly. Like you made the comment, Amelia, you think I'm fair. Well, I appreciate that, but really, there's no true objective way to grade under this, right? It's just
That's true. Yeah.
it's purely my opinion. If I did give somebody a B, I would always write them a note on why. I wouldn't just say B. I would always write them a note. Here's things that I think you could have worked on more. Usually,
That's fair, though.
yeah. Usually, I didn't get any grief over that whenever I wrote feedback like that. If somebody got an A, I'd be like, "Great, good job." Usually, for the B's, I spent a lot of time writing feedback, like, "Hey, here's why it's a B over an A." The C, here's where the C is satisfactory and it meets the basic requirements, yet the writing would benefit from further revisions of purpose, development, audience, or style, or some combination, a stronger understanding of rhetorical decision making. Writer composes across tasks at varying levels of success with some superficial revision. Writer has taken some risks in writing and exhibits some style. Okay. One of you guys take that one. How's the C contrast with the first two?
You could definitely distinguish between the B and the C, though. The A and the B are a little hard, but the C, yeah, you could tell, like, what qualifies as a C. Most people know, though. They know deep down, they know what their work, what kind of grade that they earned, basically. So a lot of times they'll probably agree with you on what they've received. Like, oh, well, I really didn't put a lot of effort into this. This is why, most people know, why they've gotten the grade they've gotten, because they usually you earn the grades that you get. But there are times that you're like, I feel like if someone were to argue a good point, maybe then you could consider changing a grade like that, like if they make good valid points. But yeah, you can see it. That's a lot easier to determine, the C and the D, compared to the A and the B, and the B to the C, like in comparison. So
Yeah, I will say, I know I said something about like the risk taker is going to be the A. The B gets the job done, but doesn't really risk as much. And I feel like they're just putting in decent work and then just kind of sticking with their decent work. They're satisfied with they're satisfied with their work, and they don't really want to do anything extra to make those risks.
yeah, no
Like,
additional effort.
I feel like B gives you some risk, but not as much as like A is like, okay, I'm gonna really rewind everything. B is more of like a, okay, I'll try. Does this take? And then C is just like a, yeah, it was good the first time. Let's just put about the same thing back in.
Right. Yeah, I think you summed it up well, Joanna. Like maybe they'll fix a couple of commas or something in the C, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then the D and the F. D's do not meet the basic standards. Texts are brief and underdeveloped. Texts show a composing process that is not yet elaborated or reflective of rhetorical understanding. Texts generally require extensive revisions to address problems with purpose, audience development, and style. And if you have an F, you have pervasive problems, right? Maybe you need to rethink your life at that point. Maybe you need to ask yourself, how did I get here? What decision did I make in my life to get to this point where you have such pervasive problems? But usually with these people who get Fs, it's plagiarism. That's usually, typically, that's what happens with those. So yeah.
Then it was well earned then. So
I learned, right? I don't think I ever had anybody contest an F that I gave. But this system presents lots of problems because lots of times the students feel jilted because they didn't think their professors were fair. They'll appeal the grades to the dean or whatever. I've actually never had anybody appeal one on me ever. But lots of times in this type of system, that's what will happen, just because it does give the teacher a disproportionate amount of power. But it also, a lot of teachers don't like this, though, because it does create, especially a big workload at the end of the semester. Because at that point, here it is, you're trying to wrap everything up, but maybe you have 40 composition students, and you're looking at all 4 of their papers at once. Maybe that's like 20 pages of work. So you can see how that stresses. This is something you guys will have to think about as teachers, your own labor. It does create a large amount of labor on you pretty close to the end. Typically with me, though, whenever I teach these, I always tell the students, don't just revise, but also show me your revisions. So like usually I'll have the students do their revisions, but then I'll tell them to like make a um, give signposts to me in the margins, like, hey, added a new thesis here, added a new paragraph here, deleted a paragraph. Like I always make students directly show me their revisions, and that makes grading go way quicker. Um, I'm not sitting there trying to with a pencil trying to find every revision they've done. They not only did the revision, but they show me what they've done. So usually, I always tell my students, maybe you've revised the thing, but you didn't. If you didn't give me proof that you revised it, I'm just going to assume you didn't. And I found that works. Kind of put the burden of proof on the student to show that they've made changes. That way, that'll solve the labor problem, where you're not trying to go through all 40 or 60 or how many students you got papers at once with a calm again. You've already done the hard work. You've already went through it with a calm once in the rough draft. In the second draft, you can kind of skim it a little more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I can only imagine the amount of work as a college professor in writing, teaching English and writing and grammar and all that. How tough that could be. So,
Well, like I've told you guys before, lots of times I'm a notoriously slow grader, but I always try to put a lot of thought into it whenever I do get around to it. But the math professors who make the same amount of money as me definitely have it easier. I'll just say that.
I agree.
Yeah, I always say I'm as slow as a turtle, but I'll always win the race. That's what I always say.
Plus, it's like you said before, it's like a philosophy thing, basically. It's hard to determine what makes you fair, but, what it's hard to, what we've read from all these articles and learned so far as education majors is it's very difficult to define what makes, this good and this bad. Why is this good? Why is this bad? Especially when it comes to writing, so it does make your job really hard.
Yeah, in my opinion, what do you guys think? Before I share my opinion, what do you guys think in a writing classroom, whether it's K-12 or even a college room? Which system do you think is better? Would you rather have the portfolio or would you rather have the more traditional model?
Ooh, I think, yeah, I know, right? That's what I'm thinking. I think that I could do either or. I think that I could still make a good grade in the first one. I would feel more comfortable with what we have, I suppose. But at the same time, it's not that I'm not confident that I wouldn't be able to do it and get that grade. But yeah.
I would agree with Amelia. I think I would honestly prefer this style because this is the same style that I had in high school. You get a grade back on every single paper. I know that if I don't do good on one paper and I say I make a B, maybe even a C on a paper, then I know that okay, well I still have 3 other papers that I can make an A on to get my grade, the grade that I want. But with the portfolio, because it's all professor interpreted and based, then I can risk getting a B or a C for one of my final, you know what I mean? One of the 2 big grades I get. Instead of constantly having something going in there that's pushing my grade up and giving me a better average.
The way reality works, though, like you were saying, life is more like this, though, like the portfolio. That is how life is. That's kind of how you're graded in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in a way it's more reality, like it's more true to reality being graded in that way. So in a way it can make you a better student, but at the same time I can see how people struggle, like why they don't necessarily do the portfolio. But like I said, I could do it, but I could see how it would mess with me a little. Like me and Joelna agreed upon, like, what if I mess up and I need to improve it somehow? But yeah.
Well, if you the feedback is there that first time though, right? Like if I grade your rough draft of your first paper, I'll be like, hey, here's everything going on with the ideas. You're also making all these comma splices and all that, right? So you actually know what to fix. I give you a roadmap to fix it. So it's not like
Yeah,
it's not like you're shooting the dart.
right. You're always really good about that, letting people know exactly where they need to make those adjustments. So you're right. I mean,
But some
as long
teachers
as you're guiding them,
some teachers might give crappy feedback.
it's
So
true.
student,
Vague.
yeah, if you're in a classroom that's doing a portfolio and you give a teacher that gives crappy feedback, then I can see where that would be bad.
I think that's what scares me. Like, I believe if I had you as a professor in one of these classes, I would feel 100% comfortable with it because I know the feedback that you give and everything. But I feel like if I'm getting a professor that's just like, nope, not the best, do it again. And I'm like, well, do what's not the best? You know what I mean? Because I'm sitting over here going, I'm putting in work that I think is good. So what's missing? You know what I mean?
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, next class, let me double check the articles for next class. Next class, we will actually talk more about this. There's this idea called the grading contract. And it basically says that if you meet some criteria that it's like almost like a checkbox criteria, you're at least guaranteed like a B. So, like, let's say you're doing portfolios, but then you have a grading contract. Like, let's say you've done 20 pages of work, you've revised all your papers, um, you meet some standard. If you meet all the parts of the grading contract, you get at least a B. And I'm not going to say anything more about that right now. That's just kind of a preview for next class because you'll read about next class. That's what it's about, grading contracts. But maybe that would, maybe if you did have a system like that, that would take away some of that worry. At least I'll get a B if I do the bare minimum. But again, but we'll talk about it next time. I won't get too deep in the weeds on it right now. Yeah, next time you're reading Peter Elbow's article, A Unilateral Grading Contract to Improve Learning and Teaching, and Emily Watson's Achieving High Goals, the Impact of Contract Grading on High School Students' Academic Performance, Avoidance Orientation, and Social Comparison. So that'll be our subject for next time. Interesting stuff. I've actually never done a grading contract. I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say about them. Yeah, as far as portfolios go, I am a believer in the system. Like, especially more so, I think, for lower level classes like 101 and 102. Here at Bluefield State, and it was the same way when I taught at community college. In those classes, we get a wide variety of people. Some of them can barely write a sentence when they get here. It makes you wonder how they got past the 8th grade. Some of them are kind of in the middle. Some of them are really strong. Maybe they had a good high school education. So usually in a room, I got at least 3 or 4 people of each one of those categories. So I'd like portfolios in those types of classrooms because I think everybody, even the higher people, get something out of it that way. Um, and I imagine if you tried to implement this in a high school classroom, uh, maybe it would be hard. You have a lot of students in high school compared to college. In a composition classroom in college, it's usually capped at 20 students. Maybe you teach 3 sections, so you have 60 students. Well, you might in high school you might have 4 classes a day with 35 people in each one. So maybe there's not that much time to do portfolios in those rooms. There you go.
Thank you so much.
Well, maybe there's not enough time to do portfolios in those kinds of rooms. So, but I imagine that if you did do it in that, your population in high school was pretty diverse too, as far as ability levels. So, I think it would work if you did do it in a K-12 setting, even middle and elementary. Why not? Why not try it? That's a good way to measure your growth of your students. It gives you some data to assess them with. It's a different way of assessing them than them taking a test, which is what principals want. Principals, all they care about is those stupid test scores. Well, it's a good way for you to measure their growth as far as their writing if you do portfolios. So, yeah, I spent a day on this just because I think it is a good system. I'm a believer in it. But as we talked about, there's all kinds of problems that can arise with it too. But you all do know that I typically don't do it in my upper level classes. Maybe I should. Maybe I should enact it in those classes too. But I typically expect a higher standard of basic competency in the upper level classes compared to the lower level classes. I don't know if I'm making sense here on my philosophy on it.
No, you are. You make completely well, and especially you as a person and as a professor, it makes complete sense for you to do something like this. Like Joanna and I both said that we would probably feel comfortable with you because we know you and how you respond and the way that you're helpful and helping us fix mistakes. But like anybody else, maybe not. But yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it's I know because when I did my master's degree at Ohio, we did the traditional grading. When I got to WVU and started working on my doctorate, they did it this way, and I was thinking, I don't know if I like this. The more I did it, the more I liked it. I only do it the other way in 101 and 102 here now because the other teachers do it that way, and we have to have some type of like uniformity. But I've told them that I disagree with them on it. That I'm only one vote amongst all the others. Democracy isn't always the best form of government. It's not always. Yeah, that wraps up our first. There's 3 of these classes dedicated to grading. One the other day, this one, and next time the contract grading. And after that, we'll start moving into talking about how do you teach various groups of people. What types of problems with teaching grammar do you have with different populations? So that'll be kind of our next unit in a week or so. Hopefully you guys are finding this section of the class more enjoyable than the actual grammar section. I hope so.
I like the philosophy, being able to say my piece, I guess, my opinion and such. and the room that this allows for that. Yeah, it makes for more enjoyable conversation.
I would definitely agree. One, grammar's not really my strong suit, so not that it was just not as much enjoyable, but this is more of like a how it can like not affect you as a teacher, but like kind of like at least what we've read so far is more of like a how you can implement more than just grammar into a classroom,
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
if that makes sense.
The deeper stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important that you get that in the grammar class. And not everything's about grammar. Well, guys, you all have a great weekend, and I'll see you again next time for the contract grading lesson.
See you then. Enjoy yourselves.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.